Welcome to Art Book Nook. My name is Kay and I share and review my collection of art and craft books. If you think watercolour has to be soft and wishy-washy, think again. Australian artist John Lovett's Textures, Techniques and Special Effects for Watercolour book rips up the rules. John shows you how to create bold, expressive paintings that will pop. So if you've ever felt stuck in a watercolour rut, this book will give you the creative jolt you didn't know you needed. So come and see why this book is one of my all-time favourite art books. John Lovett was born in Cooma, North South Wales, Australia, and John and his two brothers were encouraged to draw and paint from an early age. After leaving school, he attended the National Art School in Newcastle, got married and then moved to Sydney, where he, and I'm going to quote him here and I think this is fabulous, worked in a job that annoyed him enough to make him realise what it was he really wanted to do. So his wife Diane supported them both while John struggled to establish his name in the Sydney art world. In the introduction, John defines the way he paints, and whilst his intention in the book is to share his painting process with you, he hopes you will adopt the skills and elements he shares and mould them into your own unique style. In the first section of the book, we begin by learning to understand the John Lovett style and technique, followed by 5 projects, which will include the skills you've learnt and how you can apply these through step-by-step demonstrations. The 5 projects include landscapes, building and architectural features, boats and water, still life, and birds and animals. So there's something for everyone. So John has presented the content in his book in a less formal way than most how-to art books. It's written as though he's in the room with you and asking questions. I quite like this method as it forces you to think and not just consume the information passively. On the left-hand page, John asks you to compare a dry and detailed way to paint with a wet in wet method and presents the pros and cons of each. On the right-hand page, John shares his own style of painting, the John Lovett style, and explains why he considers there are benefits to this. From looking at the 3 images, it appears to me that John has combined the 2 methods from the left-hand page. In John's painting on the right, there is quite a bit of detail in the focal point, which is the boat, and looser wet in wet rendering of the areas around this. John provides an overview of the 5 key ingredients to his method of painting. Number 1, location to studio. John gives you advice on how to gather information and use your reference material back in the studio. 2, take risks and experiment. John encourages you to start loose and celebrate accidents and offbeat ideas. 3, simplify and suggest. Understated suggestion will make your paintings more interesting. 4, warm and cool. How to use colour temperature to improve your paintings. 5, use mixed media. Watercolour can be your main ingredient for laying down blocks of colour, but you can add accents with other media such as pastel, gouache, gesso, inks and more. In the How to Paint Like John Lovett section, John walks you through 10 of his paintings and explains why each painting works and how to do it. In Winter Comes on the left-hand page, the subconscious act of filling in the missing details makes this painting more engaging. In From the Foothills, leaving questions unanswered allows the viewer to construct their own story. This makes sense, because when we like a painting, it's because we have an emotional response and instant connection. In Rainbow's Whirl, decorative swirls and spirals are repeated throughout the painting to create a feeling of opulent, over-the-top decoration. And in High Plains Rain, smooth variation of light and dark suggests other elements, rather than looking like strokes, dots and squiggles. John describes his painting on the left, called Quietly Past Venice, like an architectural rendering gone mad. Clearing Rain is one of my favourite paintings by John. I just love it. The splodges of lilac and mauve in the foreground give the impression of raindrops on a window pane. John says, without these marks, the area would be annoyingly empty, but to insert detail would distract from the focal point. What do you think about this? Please let me know in the comments below, I'd be really interested to hear. In Damp Mist Rising, John has used ink to create some wonderful organic marks, but states once this is dry, the ink becomes permanent, so you must act quickly. In Rosa's New Pink Curtains, John needed to include these without distracting from the focal point. These are the last two paintings in this section. Although the London taxi is washed and polished every day, it bears the scars of 1,000,000 miles of bitumen, soot and traffic, and John has conveyed this with a balance of soft and sharp edges. And finally, last bus leaving, John has drawn frantically to animate the vehicle with the clattery vibrations of an idling diesel engine. I have to say, having travelled on many a red London bus, the loose, vigorous lines convey the sensation perfectly. In the final section of the first part of this book, John will tell you all about the tools you're going to need so you can follow along with the projects that follow in the second part. But John reminds us that the tools and materials are a means to an end, and not to get carried away accumulating tools just for the sake of it. John only covers the very basics when it comes to colour, but this is probably because the book is all about special effects and texture in watercolour. But he makes a very interesting point about what happens if you mix transparent and opaque colours together, and provides an example and explanation of the differences. He lists all the colour definitions such as primary and secondary, etc., and also covers the different paint mediums and their pros and cons. So what colours will you need? John has suggested a basic palette of just 5 colours in watercolour, gouache and acrylic to get you started, and asks you to consider pencils as something more than just a tool for the initial drawing stage, as they can add wonderful details, texture and lines to your paintings. And finally, John has included lots of tips and guidance for palettes and supports to help you choose. We've now arrived at the second part of this fabulous book, which is probably the most exciting part. We begin with landscapes, which is a genre I personally love. Each of the 5 projects in John's book covers different techniques, but also builds on techniques and skills covered in other projects too. John begins by clearly stating what you'll learn. In this landscape project, you'll learn how to create different types of washes, understand edge treatments, create convincing detail, and learn how to plan your painting from the beginning. To understand the sequence of events and techniques involved, the exercises on the following pages will help you to produce the simple little landscape in this painting. John describes this painting as simple, but I absolutely love it. So the working process for this step-by-step demonstration includes thumbnail sketches, a flat wash, variegated wash, soft edge graded wash, tree shapes, foreground features, building up details and graded side washes. This is not a project you can complete in a few hours, so allow yourself plenty of time and a few buckets of patience. But it'll all be worth it if you end up producing some beautiful paintings in your own unique style, inspired by John Lovett. So let's get started. John has listed the 5 colours we'll use in this project, plus white gouache, and also his tools and materials suggestions. We begin by creating several thumbnail sketches, which is an excellent way to map out your tonal values. So often we just want to rush in with our colours and then end up disappointed with the results. John tells you not to worry about details, but just to block out the major shapes. We'll then cover our support with a flat wash and grade this out. John has provided a helpful tip to achieve this, and also some really helpful advice as to what you can do if your first attempt goes wrong. We'll now apply a variegated wash to the foreground. John's tip is to not make the wash too dark, as you can always build the colour up later if necessary. On the bottom right, John explains how to mix the cool blue-grey we'll use to suggest distant hills with a soft-edged wash. John reminds us of the painting we're trying to create top left, and then details step by step how to apply the cool blue-grey colour we've just mixed to cut around the building shapes and paint the distant hills. On the right-hand page, John lists the colours we'll use to paint the trees and adds some really useful advice on how to mix dark colours. Now we'll paint the trees in the middle distance, and John will explain how to create the illusion of tree trunks once the paint has dried. Next, with our darkest colours in place, we'll deepen the colour in the foreground to prepare it for adding details. Here we've got a step-by-step mini demo where John shows you how to paint grass. On the right-hand page, he explains how to gently guide the viewer's eye towards the centre of interest using a quick, subtle graded wash. Well, that wraps up this particular project, but just over the page, John has included a few extra landscape mini projects for you to try. So let's take a look. Now that you've practiced the full John Lovett process in the first complete demonstration, it's time to take things a step further. These bonus exercises will help you include even more techniques in your landscape paintings. In this section, you'll learn how to use special effects such as placement variation, glazes, and both hard and soft edges. You'll also learn how to paint rocks, saplings, sticks and stones, plus how to build up texture through layering. We'll start with a look at placement variation, followed by a quick demo on how to use masking tape to create a clean hard edge for when you want crisp defined shapes in your painting. Sometimes a landscape painting can feel a bit flat or lifeless. It just lacks that extra bit of punch. One simple fix is to apply a transparent glaze. This helps adjust the overall temperature and depth, and it's a great way to warm up or cool down areas like the sky, the middle ground or the foreground. And here we've got a before and after example, so you can see the difference it makes. Which version of the landscape do you prefer? Let me know in the comments below. John explains how hard and soft edges can be used to gently guide the viewer's eye around a painting, and how getting that balance right can make all the difference between a strong composition and one that feels a little off. In this simple exercise, we'll paint a basic landscape, focusing on how edges can help bring certain elements forward, push others back, and control the movement of the viewer's eye through the scene. In this exercise, John takes you through 6 easy illustrated steps to show you how to create contrast in a simple landscape featuring rocks and saplings. Rocks and stones can act as a strong focal point in a painting, or simply add a subtle area of interest to support the overall composition. I think the painting of the stones in the bottom right corner is really lovely. There's so much colour in it. You'll spot a whole range of tones from deep darks to soft lights, with hints of pink, green, grey, blue, brown and even mauve. How many colours can you see? Here John gives us an overview of how the layering technique in watercolour can be used to build depth and create interesting abstract marks. He also includes a simple demonstration to show how the process works step by step. The organic shapes and monolithic presence of large rocks make them really interesting subjects to paint. In the next few exercises, John demonstrates how to use layering and modelling techniques to build up rocks that feel solid and convincing. You'll also see how he adds shadows and finishes the rocks with fine details using spidery ink lines and a rigger brush. Well, that brings us to the end of the chapter on painting landscapes. John emphasises that the only real way to improve is by doing, so he encourages readers to use what they've learned so far to create their own paintings using the reference photos provided on this page. After that, he suggests comparing your version to his finished paintings, which appear at the end of this book. Personally, I think it's a great idea not to look at John's paintings first. The temptation to copy can be strong, and it's easy to fall into simply replicating his work. But by tackling the paintings on your own first, you give yourself the chance to make your own creative choices and really absorb what you've learned. That's the best way to start developing your own voice as an artist. We've now come to Chapter 2, which focuses on painting buildings and architectural features. In this chapter, you'll learn how to use a limited palette with complementary highlight colours, how to combine bold structural marks with fine lines, and how to create contrast by balancing areas of abstraction with areas of detail. You'll also explore using white as a highlight, painting a variety of edges, textures and architectural details, and adding character with ink, collage, gesso and masking fluid. John also covers how to get proportions and perspective right, and how to use space and shape more strategically in your compositions. Wow, there's quite a lot packed into this chapter, isn't there? The mini project on the right-hand page is designed to help you practice painting bricks, stones and other facade details that give buildings their unique character. Here are a couple of close-up examples taken from one of John's paintings, where he's used strong contrast and collage to great effect. On the right-hand page, he's also introduced a broader palette, adding a splash of contrasting colour to create a more vibrant, eye-catching result. Are you brave enough to experiment like this in your own artwork? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear. We've now come to a supplementary step-by-step demonstration that explores the use of collage and gesso. Collage works beautifully alongside watercolour, gouache and acrylic, adding texture and interest in a way that's both playful and expressive. Personally, I think collage is a very underrated technique. There are some incredible collage artists out there, and I'm planning to create a video soon to highlight a few of my favourites. In this next step-by-step demonstration, John shows how to add detail using masking fluid. When applied with a dip pen, masking fluid can create incredibly fine patterns, perfect for adding intricate textured detail to your work. Sometimes it's what's left out of a painting that makes all the difference. John explains how contrasting areas of focused detail with large blank, empty or understated spaces can turn an ordinary composition into something much more engaging and attractive to the viewer. Just like bricks or stone, weathered timber can provide a great contrast to more organic shapes in your painting. Here's a simple 4-step demonstration that shows you how to create the look of weathered timber with just a few well-placed marks and washes. A painting made up entirely of flat washes and even areas of colour can sometimes feel a little lifeless. Just as contrast in colour and tone can bring energy to your work, so too can contrasting textures. Texture can be visual, physical or a combination of both, and there are all sorts of ways to introduce it. You might use plastic templates or mesh, rice or tissue paper, gesso or specialised texture mediums to create interest and variation directly onto the surface of your watercolour paper. That brings us to the end of Chapter 2, Buildings and Architectural Features. Once again, John emphasises that the only real way to improve is by doing, and to support that he's provided another set of reference photos for you to work from, so you can consolidate what you've learned in this second chapter. You'll also find John's finished versions of these scenes at the end of the book, and I'll share those with you later. So this brings us to Chapter 3, How to Paint Boats and Water. In this chapter, you'll learn how to reduce a complex subject down to its essential components, and how to arrange those elements into a clear, manageable composition. You'll explore how to use fine lines strategically to suggest detail without overwhelming the painting, how to apply transparent glazes, and how to define and intensify areas to create visual interest. You'll also look at techniques for painting shadows and reflections, capturing flat, calm water, and strengthening your work with the clever use of darks. The first demonstration focuses on the power of simplification, using an old fishing trawler as the subject. It's a perfect example of how less can often say more. John now pushes the boat out even further, excuse the pun, by guiding you through a more complex subject, which is a busy mooring scene. John begins by listing the colours you'll need, then walks you through how to reduce the clutter in the scene down to a few simple readable shapes. From there, you'll gradually build the scene back up, adding shadows and reflections, and using transparent washes and fine lines to define and intensify key areas. In this next step-by-step demonstration, entitled Still Water, John shows you how to create contrasts between drama and calm. You'll learn how to balance dynamic elements with areas of stillness, using composition, tone and technique to evoke atmosphere and mood. I think John's painting is really lovely. Reflections in water are all about the interplay between vertical and horizontal movement, and John illustrates this beautifully in the examples across these 2 pages. Look how subtle shifts in direction, tone and brushwork can suggest ripples, stillness or shimmer, bringing a sense of life to your water scenes. And that brings us to the end of Chapter 3, Boats and Water. As always, the real progress happens when you put brush to paper. To help you do just that, John has included a fresh set of reference photos for you to explore and apply what you've learned. At the end of the book, I will share with you how John approached the same scenes. In Chapter 4, John shares his approach to painting still life subjects, and there's quite a bit to take in here. You'll learn how to fine-tune your composition, how to use horizontal construction lines when drawing round objects. This is a new one for me and it sounds really helpful. And how to create a painting using just 2 or 3 colours. John also introduces some techniques that might be unfamiliar to you, like using gesso glazes, which I'm particularly curious about. You'll explore how to tie objects together for a more unified image, create depth through layering and washes, and anchor still life subjects so they appear grounded. Plus we'll look at how to balance detail with suggestion, and how to handle foregrounds and backgrounds, which is something many artists struggle with. If it's not done right, it can really throw a painting off, so I'm especially interested to see how John approaches that. The first project in this chapter is painting teapots. In this step-by-step demonstration, you'll explore how to create a range of surface textures which really bring still life subjects to life. You'll also learn how to use perspective to make your drawing more convincing and believable. By trying your hand at this still life demonstration of flowers, you'll explore another useful technique, softening with gesso glazes. It's a gentle but effective way to add atmosphere and subtle transitions, especially in delicate subjects like petals and leaves. And here John demonstrates how to create depth using transparent washes. In this second still life project, featuring a simple arrangement of 3 pairs, there are 3 main stages. In stage 1, you'll focus on shape and texture, and John introduces a technique that is quite new to me, creating texture using just plain water. Stage 2 is all about enhancing the form of the pairs and adding a background, and then in stage 3 you'll paint a loose, wet and transparent foreground to complete the composition. John reminds us that almost anything can be the subject of a still life painting, and he encourages you to explore a wide range of objects and to think outside the box. Here are 2 of John's own still life paintings for you to enjoy. Both are great examples of how everyday items can be transformed into something visually engaging and full of character. I really like the pink bike. And that brings us to the end of Chapter 4, Still Life. This chapter gives you plenty of ideas and techniques to experiment with, from gesso glazes and layered washes to composition tips and anchoring objects effectively. John has provided a new set of reference photos so you can create your own still life paintings, and once again you'll find his completed versions at the back of the book. I'll share those with you later. Would you be able to resist the temptation to peek before you finished your own? I'm not sure I could actually. In the final chapter in this amazing book, John turns his attention to painting birds and animals, which is always a favourite subject among artists. You'll learn how to use gouache effectively, how to contrast flat solid areas with more delicate, transparent details, and how to exaggerate texture to bring your subjects to life. John also explores the use of contrasting colours to create impact, how to balance fine detail with looser, more abstract elements, and how to use photographs as a reference, which is very useful when working with wildlife, as animals don't tend to sit still for very long, do they? This step-by-step demonstration features 3 chickens, each one showcasing a different set of techniques. I really enjoy painting chickens. They have loads of character and can be very bright and colourful. With the second chicken, you'll explore the contrast between finely detailed work and a loose lead-in combined with a flat wash. Then for the third chicken, you will incorporate abstract marks alongside intricate details. And at the bottom of the page, John has included some really useful tips for painting from photographs, which will help you get the most out of your own artwork. This 5-step supplementary sketch focuses on the head of a camel. I just love his cheeky little face. There's something really comical about his expression, which brings a sense of personality to the artwork. Here we have 2 contrasting examples, each showcasing a very different approach. On the left-hand page, John's limited his palette to just 3 colours and embraced the unpredictable nature of blooms and splatters to suggest texture and movement. On the opposite page, the rabbit has been rendered in sharp realistic detail for maximum impact. In the painting of the barramundi fish, John uses fine detailing. The fish almost seems to shimmer on the page. It's very effective. In the second example, he's captured the cheerful expression of a pig by placing it against a dark background, then allowed the back half of the pig's body to fade away with a couple of soft blue-grey washes. It's an excellent example of how clever and subtle choices of different techniques can shape the focus of a painting. When painting animals, John reminds us that there's no substitute for careful observation. The key is to really see what's in front of you without jumping to conclusions or making assumptions. In this step-by-step exercise, you will focus on painting a realistic rabbit's eye and learn how to capture life and expression in even the smallest detail. To paint convincing fur, it all comes down to repetition and patience. The technique itself is simple and it can be time-consuming, but the results are well worth the effort. And that brings us to the end of Chapter 5 and concludes all of the projects in John's wonderful book. To help you continue developing your skills, John has included 3 more reference photographs for you to use as inspiration for painting animals. These are a great opportunity to put everything you've learned into practice, observing closely, experimenting with texture, and capturing the unique character of each subject. As a bonus, John includes a really practical section on how to set up your studio and optimise your workspace, something that often gets overlooked but can make a huge difference to your creative process. He covers everything from how to lay out your work area to choosing the right lighting and seating for long painting sessions. There are also some useful tips on storage solutions, what kind of floor coverings to consider, and how to take better photographs of your work in your studio space, whether for your records, social media or online selling. We've now reached the gallery of John's original paintings. Let's see how he interpreted the reference photographs he provided in each of the project chapters. It's fascinating to compare John's finished works with the photos and to reflect on the creative choices he made, what he included, what he left out, and how he used colour, composition and texture to bring each subject to life. Seeing how much variety and expression is possible is really inspiring. And that brings us to the end of this inspiring and exceptional book. I hope you've enjoyed John's techniques and teachings as much as I have. There's a lot to take in, but as John reminds us, the best way to improve is simply by doing. Unfortunately, this book is no longer available in printed form. I did reach out to John, and while he has no plans to reprint it due to the high cost of distribution, the good news is you can still get your hands on a copy. It's available as a full-colour Kindle edition, and I've included links in the description below. You'll also find links to John's website, where you can explore more of his beautiful artwork and even sign up for one of his in-person workshops. Plus I've included links to his Facebook and Instagram pages, so you can follow John and keep up to date with his latest creations. Oh, I almost forgot, I also put a link to International Artist magazine, where John has written numerous articles. I hope you found my review helpful. If you did, please give this video a like. It helps YouTube promote my channel to other people who are interested in art books. I try and post a new art book review every single week, so if you'd like to see more reviews from me, please subscribe to my channel. I'd really appreciate it. And if you found this review helpful, please leave me a comment below. I do reply to all comments. And if there's an art book that you'd like to see, let me know and I will do my best to review it for you. So thank you for watching, and until next time, happy painting.